In example 5/9C, we use a different approach to create suspenseful music from a polychord. Let's hear it first, and then we'll discuss. This piece is based on a polychord made up of E flat minor 7 over C major. These two chords don't share any common tones, but they do have some neighboring tones, the E flat to E and the G flat to G. And when we stack them to create the polychord, it sounds pretty thick and dissonant. Of course, this depends on how we voice the notes. We could voice them like this. And we can rearrange them a number of different ways. Also, if we take the notes of the polychord and put them in order, we can write out this 7-note scale. This kind of assumes that C is the tonic, but that's what we use for this piece. In previous examples, we sustained the notes of a polychord using brass and strings and winds. In other words, we had harmonies, we had vertical stackings. However, in 5/9C, we don't have that as much. Instead, we rely more on horizontal writing. Look at this melody line in the flutes, clarinets, and violin. And for reference, here's the scale that came from our polychord. I'll play the melody now. So this melody starts on C and kind of meanders downward through the notes of the scale. I think the only note we're missing is the G flat. And if we were in the key of C, we get what sounds like a minor third and a major third. And I think that plays into the feeling of uncertainty. Anyway, instead of playing the entire polychord at once, we're hearing the polychord one note at a time, and writing it out this way actually reduces the dissonance. I feel like this piece grows in intensity as it goes on. Under the melody, we do have some sustaining notes. We start with just a contrabass holding a low G, which kinda sounds like the low fifth in the key of C. Then, at the end of measure 1, we bring in mid-range string tremolos. By the way, the violin 2 fills in that missing G flat. Now look at the voicing of the strings. B flat to G flat is a minor sixth, and the cello E to B flat is a diminished fifth. This G to E is a major sixth, but remember the contrabass sounds an octave lower than written, so like this. But we're mainly using these fifth and sixth intervals, giving us this open voiced kind of sound. Even though these notes come from a polychord, I think we're voicing them in a more consonant way. To me, this sounds more harmonically rich, as opposed to this, which sounds dissonant. As the piece goes on, we keep the string tremolos and the low bass. The melody then gets traded to bassoon and viola. But right before that, we bring in some trumpets. And I feel like this raises the tension. They're just playing 2 notes at a time, but they're swelling from piano and crescendoing up to forte. And the top note rises from E flat to E to G flat. Overall, this piece shows us another way to use polychords. We can use them more for the scale they provide, and I think we build tension in a couple different ways. Sure, we're using the harmonic language of the polychord, but we're also building the arrangement. We start with just melody and bass, and then we start filling in harmony. And then we add the layer of trumpets. So we're building a thicker texture as we go on. Plus, we're using dynamics to build tension, especially toward the end.